Hey there everybody, welcome to the channel. Tabletop RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons are a great way to spend time with friends and tell a story together about overcoming adversity while using problem-solving skills along the way. Though sometimes, whether it be a player or a DM, someone can make a decision that makes you wonder,
"What art thou thinking?"
Much like the examples in the following stories. But first, do you know what time it is? If you guessed that it's time for Lucky, the like and comment kitty, then you would be correct. Nice job there, Lucky. Remind me to give you a treat at the end of the video. But with that done, let's hop right into these stories. DM gets blamed because bandits act like intelligent human beings. By Reddit user Asterion Del Toro. After one or two adventures together, the party was contracted by the town guard to deal with some bandits who'd been ambushing travelers to and from the boonies. Walking along the road, they run into a camp of ne'er-do-wells. Rough-looking guys, the DM says, setting up in tents along the side of the road. As the party approaches, the ruffians laugh at what was apparently a dirty joke. The party's face hails the men, who get quiet all of a sudden. After some talk, the face tells them that he and his fellows are looking for the bandits troubling the road. One of the toughs, a gruff man with only one good eye, replies, "You don't say." Tension hangs in the air. "Yes," says the face. "Would you happen to know anything about that?" "What are you implying?" One Eye answers. "Well," the face says, "if you've been camped out here for a while, you've probably seen something, or maybe heard from some people who were attacked." DM is not sure where this is going. Face is being very friendly, and none of the players seem to be expecting a fight. DM asks for a perception check. Everyone passes, and the DM tells them that these men look like real rough customers. Most of them have scars. All of them are wearing patchy leather armor. All of them are armed with worn but lethal-looking weapons, whom they also have their hands on. Most of them have recent cuts and superficial wounds, and all of them are keeping their eyes on the party. Face smiles, understanding what the DM's getting at, or so he thinks, and says, "In fact, from the look of it, you seem to have had some trouble recently. Maybe a scuffle with these same bandits?" One Eye stares, saying nothing but looking a little confused. "Since you're not dead, you obviously managed to drive them off, yes?" Face continues. "Did you happen to see which way they fled?" Another party member cuts in. "If you can't help us find their hideout, we'll gladly give you a share of the reward." One Eye tells the party to hold on for a second, then confers with his men out of the party's earshot. After a minute or so, One Eye comes back. "Yeah, we tussled with them," he says. "In fact, we know exactly where they're holed up. They're too tough for us, but you look like you wouldn't have much trouble. Come on, we'll show you." A quick hike takes the party and their new comrades into the woods, to a cave on a hillside. A short distance inside the cave, they come to a rope bridge stretched across a chasm. One Eye tells the party to go first, that there's trouble on the opposite side, and the party does so. "Are the bandits close?" the face asks. "Very close," One Eye says. "In fact, they're right behind you." And the bandits cut the ropes, collapsing the bridge and sending the party tumbling into the chasm, all while One Eye and his crew laugh. The players immediately call shenanigans on the DM. "What the hell?" the face says. "Why are they betraying us for the bandits?" "Those were the bandits," the DM says. "Bullshit," says another player. "If they were the bandits, they would have attacked us on sight. You're just making shit up to punish us." "Why would they have attacked you?" asks the DM. "They're bandits," the player replies. "It's what they do. They attack people on roads and take their stuff." Another player cuts in. "Yeah, it's a dick move, man. It feels like you just decided that they were bandits on a whim." Everybody is glaring at the DM, and everybody is pissed. "Look, bandits are like predators," the DM says. They don't attack the strongest prey, but the weakest. The people who travel this road are small peddlers and farmers. You're mercenaries with weapons, armor, and magic. They're not going to pick a fight with you if they can avoid it.
Fuck off, you're just a shit DM. How are we supposed to fight them if they won't attack first?
You could have attacked first, the DM says. You're working for the town guard, and they're obviously...
All the more reason they would attack us,
a player cuts in. The DM looks around in disbelief. He seems to be the only one at the table who finds it plausible for professional criminals to assess risks and exercise discretion. DM quickly moves on with the party, landing at the bottom of the pit, forgetting about fall damage to mollify them, which segues into a dungeon crawl to get back to the surface. In the end, the players consider it a satisfying session, but to this day, they consider this incident to be a huge gaffe on the DM's part. They can't comprehend that a bandit could be anything other than an automaton who sees adventurers and flies into a homicidal rage to shake down a heavily armored party for a few coins to buy dinner. Heaven forbid that the NPCs be at least as intelligent as the players. TLDR, party fails to recognize obvious bandits because they don't attack immediately, get led into a trap, then blame the DM for making the bandits behave like they can actually think. I think that in this case, the NPCs were more intelligent than the players. I mean, how could they not tell that they were the bandits? The DM couldn't have made it any more obvious, short of saying that they were all wearing name tags that said, "Hey, we're bandits." All I have to say is, God help this DM, because it sounds like he's still DMing for them to this day. And God help those players, because, bruh. Let's move on to the next story.
I want to roll to see up her skirt.
By Reddit user, Fearsome to Behold. I just started a new campaign recently that I'm DMing, and I've been sharing some of my horror stories with the players, and this one came back to me. Many a year ago, I played in a game with some casual acquaintances, and our party had just killed a worm in a dungeon. My character, a female rogue, was covered in dead worm guts, so I decided to have her clean off most of the junk in a small pool our DM had described in the corner of the room. She jumps in, clothes and all, rubs off the intestines, and crawls out. The wizard declares,
I want to roll to see up her skirt.
I was a little thrown, but tried to play it off by saying, well, she's wearing pants, so there isn't a skirt to look up. To which the DM tells the wizard to roll anyway. The wizard gets a middling number. It's been many years, I don't remember the exact roll. And the DM turns to me and says,
You're wearing a skirt now, and he sees your ass.
Good times, good times. So, wizards' perception checks can magically change what a character is wearing? I don't think that's in the player's handbook. I can already tell that these stories are going to induce some major psychic damage.
Roll to see how well you perform.
So, this is another horror story from the same game as my first post. My apologies that it's a bit longer than the last. I've tried to pare it down as best as I can. TLDR at the bottom. Our party was exploring a new dungeon, and the wizard had transported himself into a different part of the dungeon in an effort to circumvent a locked door blocking us from the rest of the dungeon. After a little exploring on his own, the wizard decides that since he's alone, that he wants to rub one out. Oh, come on, really? Both he and the DM find this hilarious, and the DM says,
Roll to see how well you perform,
which elicits more laughter from them and a few others at the table. Wizard makes a jerking off motion as he rolls his d20, and this is where things really go downhill. Because this was years ago, I don't remember exactly what he rolled, but it was high enough for the DM to declare that it was very successful. At this point, 2 or 3 of the other players at our table of 8, DM included, are pretending to jerk off as they roll their dice. DM puts his hands up and says,
Everyone roll to perform.
Now, I had already been really uncomfortable, But despite this, I didn't say anything. In hindsight, I see I ought to have said literally anything, but I was 18 and a people pleaser, and hadn't yet learned how to be in conflict with friends and acquaintances, especially a group of relatively new ones. We do the best we can with the tools we have at the time. The other players roll, and the DM gave each of them a short, suggestive description of how well they'd done. When they come around the table to me, I shake my head and say, "I'd rather not," to which the DM shrugs and rolls for me.
Fearsome to Behold's character does the worst of all. Performance anxiety, maybe.
And then there was more laughter and jokes. Eventually, the joke peters out, and we moved on to finish the session for the night. Afterwards, I hung back until all the other players had filtered out to talk with the DM. While I was not the best at confrontation, the events of the session had made me uncomfortable enough that I decided to say something to the DM in private. Maybe a one-on-one conversation would help. I said something to the effect of, "Hey, today's session wasn't really in my comfort zone." But before I could say any more, the DM jumps in with a laugh to say,
"Yeah, that's part of why it's funny."
I was pretty taken aback and didn't know what else to say, so I just said goodnight and left with my stuff. Later that same night, I was still pretty unsettled, but, being young and dumb, I didn't want to give up on the game and the new friends I was trying to make, so I decided to take my thoughts to the group's private Facebook page. The gist of what I posted was, "Hey, the masturbation joke at tonight's session made me uncomfortable, but I know I didn't say anything at the time, so you might not have known. I'm wondering if we can keep that in mind moving forward. I really like playing with you all. Thanks." The first couple of replies were great. Other players chimed in with apologies and promised to keep a little more decorum in the future. Eventually, however, our party's barbarian comments with something along the lines of,
"Don't be a bitch. You're the reason people don't take girls in RPGs seriously. We're just having fun. Why do you have to be a buzzkill? Chill out."
A few other players jumped in to temper the conversation, but the anticlimactic ending here is that we never really talked about it again, online or in person, and I kept playing with the group for a few more months. Very young and dumb, I know. I deserve all the lampooning for not taking these giant red flags at face value and leaving right then. TLDR, wizard character decides to masturbate, with motions and all. DM has everyone roll. After the session, when I tell the DM I'm uncomfortable, he says that's part of why it's funny. When I tell the group I was uncomfortable through our Facebook group, Barbarian says I'm what's wrong with women in RPGs. I go on to continue playing with this group. I don't think OP should be too hard on herself for not leaving. As you get older, you realize that, yes, when you are 18, you are legally an adult, but in reality, you are still just a kid with a lot to learn about the world. And the other players definitely showed that in spades, with how funny that they thought the whole fat happy session was, and the way that Barbarian responded to OP when she said that it made her uncomfortable. But let's see how this trilogy ends, shall we? And before we get to it, I need to give a heads up that this next part contains themes of sexual assault, so if you would like to skip it, you can go to this time code here. But with the warning out of the way, let's get into it. He takes you to his quarters. So, our party was attempting to charter passage across the ocean by speaking with different ship captains at a large harbor. The wizard starts talking with the captain of a large fancy ship, and it becomes clear pretty fast that we won't be able to afford passage from this guy. The wizard asks,
"Is there anything we can trade? Goods or services?"
The DM, as the captain, agrees.
"I'm sure we can work something out."
This was said in a highly suggestive manner.
"Tell me about the party."
The wizard describes our ragtag group to the captain. They exchange a few text messages to keep the conversation private, since the rest of the party wasn't there. I'll admit, I was getting really nervous at this point. I had a strong idea of where this might be going, and I was not into that at all. After a few messages, the wizard turns to the ranger and says,
"Hey buddy, come with me. I think I found us a ship."
I look at the ranger, and it seems like he's drawn the same conclusion I have, and he does not look happy. "I want to go too," I offered, but the DM tells me that I can't because my character isn't there. I ask if I can see the wizard and ranger, but I don't roll high enough to spot them. The ranger resists going, saying that he wants to gather the party first, but the wizard jumps in and says,
"I cast Charm Person on the ranger."
Most of the folks in this group are playing D&D for the first or second time, and didn't know spells rules as written very well. When the DM said this worked, I didn't even think to question how exactly Charm Person works. They roll against each other, and the wizard comes out on top. The ranger, begrudgingly, agrees to go. Once on the ship, the wizard introduced the ranger to the ship's captain.
"The ship captain looks at the ranger approvingly,"
the DM says.
"He takes you to his quarters."
The ranger resists again, saying that his character wouldn't go, but the DM says he can't say no because he's under the effects of Charm Person. The DM goes on to say that the ship captain fucks the ranger. The ranger looks somewhere between sick to his stomach and furious. "And I can't stop this?" Ranger asked. DM shakes his head.
"Charm Person lasts for at least an hour."
I ask how long it's been, and I say I want to go looking for the ranger and wizard. DM accuses me of using metagame knowledge and says I wouldn't know to look for those two in particular. After the ranger's character is raped, he says, "Well, after the spell effect ends, I want to kill both the wizard and the ship captain." Wizard looks through his spell sheet and says,
"I cast Modify Memory to erase the ranger's entire memory of the event."
DM nods, and the ranger and wizard roll. Wizard succeeds.
"You have no memory of the event afterwards," DM says.
The ranger and I tried a couple of other things to try and expose the wizard. Perception checks, sense motive, etc. But none of it works. At some point, DM said,
"Other than having a sore ass, there's no way your character would know. That could be from anything."
Eventually, the rest of the session moves on, and we get on the boat, and so on. But Ranger is really tuned out and disengaged until the session ends. When I went to check on him in his dorm after the session, he was still really upset. He was pissed that the DM and wizard had just done that to his character, and that there was nothing he could do about it. After that, scheduling conflicts got in the way, and the game fell apart. The Ranger, another player, and I would go on to play more games together in the future. They're both lovely guys, and we're still friends, even if it's from a great distance. This is definitely the horror story where I have the most regret. I shouldn't have tried things in-game to solve an out-of-game problem. I should have done literally anything more than what I did. Checking in on him was baseline. I should have said something at the table. I didn't have the backbone to stop the session when the Ranger was uncomfortable, when his character got to the ship, when his character was raped, or to say something to the DM after. While Ranger assures me that we're cool, I still feel badly when I think about it. This experience has definitely changed the way I approach conflict in my regular life, let alone in games. I've really worked on being able to speak up and be in conflict with others, at all. Nothing like this has ever come and gone at a table without me saying something since. Moral of the story: when in doubt, say something. Say anything. TLDR: Wizard uses mind control, or Charm Person, on Ranger, so he can be raped by the captain of a ship as payment for passage. When Ranger wants to kill him, Wizard erases the memory with memory modification, and the DM rules that all of this works. I have to say that I agree with OP's statement at the end there. If you're at a table and something has taken place that makes you or someone else uncomfortable, say something. And if they don't listen and the stuff continues after that, just leave the table. While I understand that everyone at this table was still a bit young, they were still old enough to know that what they were doing was wrong. Not only did they take away a player's agency, but they did it in one of the most disturbing and disgusting ways possible. Seriously, if someone wants to roleplay this type of thing out in a game of Dungeons & Dragons, something tells me that they probably fantasize about that type of thing, and that is not someone that I would want to associate with. It is good to hear that OP and Ranger are still friends and playing games to this day. And remember that you don't have to take shit like this from anyone, whether it be in real life or at an RPG table. Let's move on. GM writes my character as a pedophile without me knowing. By Reddit user KingKang1993. It all started a few years ago when me and my friend, just call him Druid, decided to get his old friends together for sessions, as I was just getting into D&D at the time, with Druid as my DM. The friends in question are as follows: Sorcerer and her husband Barbarian, Bard, him, Ranger, him, Rogue and her brother Wizard, who are both Barbarian's co-workers, and Cleric, him, who is the GM in question. We would all get together to play at Sorcerer and Barbarian's home every Saturday, since they could accommodate us all. We all played with Druid as our GM for a few sessions, in his 3.5 homebrewed setting. Druid was getting a little burnt out, having to be the GM all the time, and needed to take a break. That's when Cleric offered to do a one-shot mini-adventure with pre-made characters and backstories. I think you see where this is going. I normally love to play martial-type characters in any RPG, so I was down with the idea of leaving my comfort zone for a little bit. We had our first session, and the pitch was, we all woke up in a prison cell with amnesia, and as we make it through each session, our characters will regain fragments of our memories. My character was a gnome cleric, and was pretty vital for the first session, as we fought a bunch of undead and some devils. So it's pretty good so far. After a couple of sessions, it's been revealed that Barbarian and Rogue's players were having an affair, and that pretty much fractured the party. After all that, it was still me, Cleric, the GM, Hunter, Wizard, and Bard. We played a couple more sessions, and over the course of all that, it's revealed that my character was a minor politician that did good for his community. Until we get to the next to last session, where my character was revealed to be a pedophile that was trafficking children into his basement. Don't get me wrong, I love dark stories and characters, and perhaps I could be overreacting to this, but there was something that just never sat right with me over this decision, and I've stewed over this thought for years. Over time, the group disintegrated, and we've barely talked since. Right now, me and Druid are doing our own group, with me working on a Dark Crystal-inspired setting, and I'm hoping for the best, as I wish the same for my former group. Well, that certainly was a story. It does suck that they lost players due to out-of-game drama with that affair. And yes, I did check. It was the players, not the characters. But it sounded like the game was pushing forward anyway. But then to have the GM spring something like that on a player is really messed up. How is a player supposed to react to that type of thing? What the DM should have done was make that character an NPC that the players could fight against, not force a player to play them. If I was OP and the DM did that to me, I would have made that character self-delete right there and then just leave the game. Though, those are just my thoughts. What do you think? And by the looks of it, we have time for one more bonus story to help fill out this video. So let's hop right in. DM makes us waste hours and hours searching for something that wasn't there. Has nerve to be annoyed with us for wasting time. By Reddit user Port Arthur Panda. It was a new D&D campaign with a new DM. At the very beginning of the first session, the characters get hired by a wizard who wants us to retrieve a magic key from a dungeon. The wizard insists on coming along, controlled by the DM as an NPC. We go to the dungeon and fight some monsters, find some traps, etc. But no magic key. It quickly becomes clear that the dungeon is packed full of 7th guest puzzle bullshit, and we keep opening hidden doors by doing stuff like putting the glass eye that we found in one room into the empty eye socket of a statue in another, etc. We solve all sorts of puzzles to open all sorts of hidden doors over many hours, but still, no magic key. The NPC wizard who hired us insists we keep looking. This goes on for 5 hours across multiple sessions. We eventually start saying, I don't know, maybe the key isn't really here. But each time, the NPC wizard keeps insisting that we just need to search more. Eventually, after 5 boring hours of this, the DM gets frustrated and tells us that we were supposed to realize that the key wasn't there and leave so that the story could progress. He has the nerve to act annoyed with us because we wasted so much time looking for the key that he told us to look for inside the pointless time-wasting puzzle funhouse of a dungeon that he designed. And when we pointed out that his NPC kept telling us to keep looking every time we were about to do what he wanted and give up the search, he had the nerve to say that we
weren't supposed to keep listening to him.
I hit the eject button on that campaign. Yeah, good call on that. Why the hell would a DM have an NPC have the party go look for something, only for that thing to not be there, but still have the NPC insist that it is, and then get mad at the players for looking for it? It'd be like our government saying that there are weapons somewhere, only for them not to be, but insist that we keep looking anyway, only for it to eventually lead us into a forever war. But that's going to do it for today. Do you have a story that you would like to be shared on the channel? If so, be sure to post a link in the comments, on the DnD Doge subreddit, or even just DM me on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you who like and watch my videos, and remember to always think before you leap. Right, Lucky? Until next time.